They say Catholics are um, more interested in smells and bells, and it's true. We are very big into the visual, very big into the music, but we love the perfect orchestra of all of it, the sights, the smells, and it fortifies us in our faith. So guilty as charged. We are the faithful of smells and bells. Okay, so today's episode, what we're going to talk about is um, why we were born and what it means to us as Catholics to look at that one question and try to pattern our life around the real purpose as to why we were born, right? So we were taught that the three reasons we were born was to know, to love, and to serve our God. Okay. Now, for many, they'll say, "Yeah, that's very childlike. That's not very realistic. In the real world, it's just not that easy." Well, many generations have lived their lives exactly that way. They made sure that they put Christ at the forefront of everything. And I like to say that years ago, our grandparents and our great grandparents would live in cold water flats with bathrooms in the backyard without running water, but yet they would build these beautiful cathedrals to God, right? So their order in their life was perfectly aligned with what was important in their life, what was the priority. They also had an understanding of grace. And this is a term that has been lost over the decades. And what we used to be taught by the church was what sanctifying grace was, what actual grace was, and what it did for us in order to help save our soul. Now, what's interesting is not only is grace not talked about much today, but the actual saving of our soul is almost laughed at, right? So let's first talk about what is sanctifying grace. A sanctifying grace is a way to confer on our soul a new life, so that we can share our life with God Himself. The Bible used to refer to it as life, living water, and light. I mean, that's how they viewed grace. So, what we know is that there's an actual grace, and an actual grace is a supernatural help that God gives us to enlighten us, to strengthen us, so that we will do more good and avoid evil. That's what the grace from Christ is about, to fortify us to turn away from evil and do good. Now, the sanctifying grace is we receive these graces based on what we do. So, in other words, if we receive the sacraments more often, the sacrament of confession or the sacrament of communion, the Holy Eucharist, we are now putting ourselves in a position of receiving these graces from Christ. And it's through those acts and acts of prayer and other good works that we build ourselves up into this state of grace, right? So if you take those two things, if you take the why were we born, to know, to love, and serve God, and then grace and sanctifying grace, it works together as a perfect orchestra, right, in our lives. So now, how has that changed over the years? Well, and this is our secular nature. We fight it our entire lives, right? Because we are in this world. And so we have to exist, but we have to keep telling ourselves, but we're not of this world. And that's a constant battle. That is where the devil plays the best. He's a deceiver. He constantly tries to let us believe that we really are of this world. Why? Because it's his world, right? Um, and he wants us to embrace it. He wants our human nature, which is highly corruptible, to be embracing this world and making everything of this world a priority. And we fall victim to it very easily if we don't get those sanctifying graces. Now, let's make a distinction, excuse me, between what is a duty of state and what is participating in more of a secular activity for our own benefit. So a duty of state is what we do mostly as parents, right? So we work, we pay the bills, we provide shelter, we feed the children, we buy clothes, we educate them. Those are all duties of state. And in that duty of state is a sanctifying grace. There's a fine line, though, when you start taking that duty of state too far and you start saying that it now needs to be much more. Okay. You now need to fill the emptiness in your life, not with spiritual things, but with materialistic things. And so I like to say there that we start to develop this big hole inside of us that has to be filled with spiritual things, not material things. But our human nature is to keep on trying to fill them with things of this world, right? So rather than doing a devotion or going to mass or saying a rosary or doing acts of charity, we feel everything it needs to be about us. The latest movies, the latest sports equipment, participating in more sports, buying bigger houses and buying better cars and buying more clothes. See, when you do that, you start pulling away from your primary duty, which is to know, to love, and serve. We don't say to buy, to buy, to buy, okay? Or to buy to make myself feel better, to fill my incompleteness with more material things. And you can see this happening in the culture. It never can be fed. That hole, when it tries to be filled with material things, when it should be filled with spiritual things, has an insatiable appetite and you can never satisfy it, right? Bishop Sheen had given a great sermon where he said, you have to be careful to know the difference between what you need or what you want, and even made even clearer, what you want from what you ought, right? Now, ought is an old fashioned term. My grandparents used to use it like, you ought not do that, right? Well, what he was trying to say is what you want could be something that's not necessary, right? What you ought to have is something that is necessary. And so if you want to find this perfect balance of when is it enough, you have to really ask yourself, do I really need that? Do I really need that? Is it really necessary? Not does it make me happy, because you may think it make you happy. It's just another staircase to another wanting. You just never stop wanting, right? So what we do as Catholics is we have to start pulling back. We cannot try to keep up with the Joneses, with the latest craves, the latest have to haves, the latest wants, and actually become a little bit more pauper like in our lifestyle. Now, taking money and putting it aside rather than always spending is not a bad thing. Actually, it's not only economical, it's just good sense to hold back in case you need something in an emergency. Today, everything is extension. We have a system where everybody extends their credit as far as they can. They have to get as many possessions as they can. When the house isn't as big as they want it to be, they got to get it bigger. They got to get nicer cars, and so forth, so on. So you get the idea that we have to start practicing our basic catechism, and it's so elementary. It's crazy how we lost sight of that over the years. We have to wake up in the morning and we have to say, what in my life today is going to help me achieve those three goals? To know Christ, to show him our love, okay? So to know him and to love him, and then to do his will. Maybe his will is something that's going to come about if we just shut up and listen, right? Now, how do we shut up and listen to get these graces when we're trying to stay in the great state of grace? Usually through prayer. We pray to listen, and then we wait to hear. Patience is a phenomenal thing. We live in a culture today that everything is instantaneous. There's that old joke where the guy says, I prayed to Christ for patience, and I told him I need patience and I need it now, right? Well, that is our culture today. Everything is immediacy in everything. Let's practice the old-fashioned way of saying, we're going to hand it over to Christ. We're going to be patient. We're going to wait. May take them a week, may take them a month. Matter of fact, sometimes the non-answer is an answer. Doesn't want you to do anything. I like to use the expression that is, don't just do something, sit there, right? Sit there and wait for Christ. Prepare the day for Christ. He won't disappoint. Now, I've seen in my life when anything was too much for me to handle, if I went and spent time in front of the Blessed Sacrament for an hour and just let it all go and just turned it over and said, what do you want from me? When I didn't, when I thought I knew better and I kept on moving my way, okay, usually was a disappointment. They say you want to make Christ laugh, tell him your plan, right? So let's say, for purposes of this first episode, which is the first week of Lent in 2021, which is really nice, right? And all this craziness we're going through. Let's practice one thing: to know, to love, and to serve our God, and to get these sanctifying graces we're going to need as armor to battle against the devil in our culture, and to battle not only for us, but for our kids and our grandkids, because they need us to fortify the faith. They need this deposit of faith in their life. We cannot give it away wholesale. We got to maintain it. It's an awesome tradition that was handed down to us over the centuries, and we need to continue it to move forward. So, God bless, and I'll see you in the next episode.